Today we'll be talking about Foodfight, directed by Lawrence Kasanoff and starring quite a cast ahead of us. Uh, I I know why I do these things, but other times I question myself as to what good this is doing. So I saw Foodfight, if you couldn't tell, and wow, it's more than I expected. It's less than I expected. It's everything that I expected, and more and less. Okay. All right. So first of all, the animation is worse than I expected. I had seen some pictures of animation of still shots of this movie, and it looks pretty bad. But watching the thing as a whole cohesive unit, it was even worse. But I'll give you a few samples right now as to what we're talking about. This one haunts me, and I don't want to see curlers ever again. The guy with the bug eyes is Christopher Lloyd's character, and yeah, look what a nice guy he seems to be. These are the main characters in the movie, and that bottom right, that weasel, yeah, that's the one that looks like poo. The puns in this movie, I think we got into the hundreds in terms of just how many puns there were. And given that this movie is like roughly 100 minutes ish, it might have been like 80 minutes, but it felt longer. Might have been 120, but it felt shorter. It's really hard to say, but the puns in this movie were in the hundreds. First of all, you had this whole set throughout the entire movie, and they had like three locations. They had the store during the daytime, they had this whole city in the nighttime, and they had this kind of pseudo land in between with all the transitions that go on. It's kind of murky world, but mainly two worlds with the exception occasionally. The occasional exception. It's much easier to say. So some of these were really good puns, or okay, I appreciated them more. Others were really corny puns, and I like corny puns, but I know they're not for everyone. And then some of the puns or jokes didn't even make sense. And there is a difference between, a bad pun that makes you groan and a bad pun that is not coherent. A bad pun that makes you groan at least has a punchline that you know the answer to and you know what's coming, but at least it connects. Other times, the joke doesn't work. One prime example of the joke that doesn't work is you bet your box top. Yeah, that's an actual line in the movie, and that's said by Wayne Brady's character, who's like a chocolate squirrel, and he's pretty scary. He's got the big cheeks. If you ever call my cheeks big, his are bigger and freakier. You have Dex Dog Detective. I'll just go through the list of characters at this point. Dex Dog Detective, who's Charlie Sheen, and one name that I heard for him that I really liked was Indiana Bones. That's not my credit though. And then you have Hilary Duff's character, Sunshine Goodness. I mean, I think like a 5-year-old could have come up with that. In fact, I wonder if they did. You got like Lady X, Eva Longoria's character. She's pretty enough, but you figure out that she's actually a prune. I went on a recall. This movie's really weird, by the way. I gotta admit. You have Christopher Lloyd's character, who's the crazy bug-eyed guy who walks in a really weird way, and it's never explained. It's not like this guy just thinks he owns everything. Well, he sort of thinks that, but his walk is not explained by his demeanor. It's just a really stupid walk because the animation is terrible. You have this lady who looks like she has drumsticks as her hair, like chicken drumsticks, like the kind you eat with like, the big, you know, hunk of meat on this one bone. Yeah, she looks like she has two of them in her as her hair. And her face is disgusting. And I'm sure they were going for that, but I mean, even unseasonably, unhuman, inhuman. Yeah, it's bizarre. And then this whole set, like I said before, there were some other puns like melon rouge, ant acid, where they had a picture of an actual ant. I don't know if that's really a pun or not, but it's like what's the business? Does he just sell acid? And this movie is supposedly made for kids, which it's not a big deal to me if younger kids are gonna watch older films. I'm not gonna be the one that does that, but I know it's gonna happen. But it's jokes that kids probably won't even understand unless they're like well versed into the sense of adult jokes. Um, it's just really confusing. The other thing I should mention too is that the poster for this movie is really misleading. You might have seen that at the beginning where it had, you know, Charlie Tuna, like the fish. You had the Vlasic pickle guy, and you also had Mrs. Butterworth, like the syrup lady, and then you have some other characters towards the back, trying to like reach for the shopping cart. Yeah, those were the main characters. Um, to be fair, this movie didn't actually like go to movie theaters or anything, so I guess that's fine, but it's still pretty misleading. Some of the other puns, let me pull up a list for you. Um, were 4 carrots for when the X detective like opens up the box and this little like diamond box. He's gonna propose the Sunshine Goodness, this like cat human. She's supposedly like a cat character, but she looks more human. It looks like she's just a human with like a cat mask on, except the cat mask melted onto her face. It's pretty freaky. Um, yeah. And I keep talking about this animation, but what about the actual story itself? Well, the story isn't really better. In fact, it's somehow stupider. And yeah, they go to Jupiter too. But I mean, basically, you got Casablanca. Yeah, except you're trying to mix it with like a noir field, like kind of like what happens with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You have some other elements of other big old movies like like Toy Story, um, and you also have this sense of other cliches that try to come in, having all these animated characters come to life. There's this whole story about supposedly these brands are getting recalled and they're getting like thrown out of the market, and there's a whole sabotage plot by this brand X, and they're supposedly like the generic products and all the brand name products are going to get thrown out, and they want you to sympathize with the brand name products, but the reality is that it's kind of the flip side. I think it would make sense if like you had, well, it's kind of a hard movie to sell anyway. You don't have exactly a lot of generic things in a grocery store, and then the corporate things come in. So I guess in one sense, the corporate names worried about the generic products coming in and beating their market share. That's one thing, right? So I guess that in one sense that would make sense. Except, people as a whole don't really buy generic stuff as a whole, mind you. Some people are savvy and they realize that, it's pretty much the same thing except with a different label. And, sometimes 30 cents cheaper, sometimes $2 cheaper, really depending on the product. I, it's hard to say whether or not Mountain Lightning, tastes a whole lot different than Mountain Dew. I'm sure if anyone ever, has had Mountain Lightning, they'll let me know. But in the meantime, it's pretty much the same thing. Um, Maybe even a little better. I've only had it once personally, but that's not the point. The point is this plot is half baked and the animation is half baked too. And I think everyone behind the movie was half baked as well. No, 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 no. They were fully baked. But moving on. Some of the puns that I did like, getting back to that. Um, I did like the Melon Rouge as opposed to Moulin Rouge, kind of going for that older feel. Um, you also have some like background things. You have, oh, let's see here. They don't. I don't have that many things to be honest with you. Um, they had one thing that was kung tofu. I don't know if I liked it or not. I chuckled a little bit, but it wasn't like the best thing out there. I think one thing that was a little ridiculous was that at the end of every scene, Dex Dog Detective, this supposedly like I said, the Indiana Bones dog character that's played by Charlie Sheen, he has some like catchphrase at the end of every scene, but it's never the same catchphrase. Well, most of the time it's not. He has this one catchphrase called "The Secret's Inside," which just weird, but okay. Um, and then when he's not saying that, he's quoting other big movies, except instead of the actual quote, you replace like a grocery item, and it's like instead of Casablanca's quote of all the bars and all the women and the walk in, she walked in the mine, yada yada yada. It's all the supermarkets and all the produce aisles, and it works once, right? So some jokes work once, and then it's stupid. Um, this movie had a lot of jokes like that. Like the 4 carrots got like a mild, and I mean very mild, and I laugh easily. So I like puns, okay? So like I was like, that's kind of funny, but I wasn't like, roaring in laughter or anything. I was like, yeah, okay. And like I said, some of the puns landed, and others weren't even in this planet. And I think this movie was, concocted in another planet, to be honest with you. Um, Hilary Duff's character doesn't really do a lot. The animation they put on her looks really bad too. They more or less, well, all the characters had this certain plasticity as part of that backstory that made the movie so long to put together and produce. But she always looked blind, and she was never looking at the characters that she was actually talking to. Let's say that you're Dex Detective or whatever character she's talking to, and instead of me looking at the camera this way, I'd be looking like here and saying, "Oh, isn't this great, Dex? Isn't this so great?" Or, "Oh, thank you for loving me. Don't you like my raisins?" And yeah, raisins are a thing. Um, Everyone seems to like raisins and chocolate. Even these animals that supposedly, are eating them, but in real life they wouldn't fare so well if they actually did. Who who needs science, right? Anyway, in terms of spoilers, everything's spoiled in this movie. Um, like I said before, this is more or less a Casablanca. You really have this Lady X that comes in and she tries to woo Dex Detective after Sunshine Goodness has been recalled. It's pretty obvious from the get go that she was behind the whole thing, and you're trying to figure out just what is going on with her and Christopher Lloyd, and all that turns out to be is that Lady X is operating the robot known as Christopher Lloyd's character, which, by the way, explains why he walks super weird. So, Okay, I guess you get that one back movie. Okay, that's fine. But you're still like 80 in the hole, so you got a long way to go. You have Wayne Brady's character who's just a complete dumbass, and I do mean that in every sense of that word because, well, there's only two senses. There's the dumb part, which his intelligence is, makes subpar look excellent. And the ass part, well, okay, so he's a squirrel, so I guess he doesn't fully fulfill the animal requirement of that. But he always interrupts Dex at the wrong time, and he always talks about how Lady X likes him for his chocolate, and he tells this girl that he wants to butter her muffin. Which, first of all, hi, why were you watching Mean Girls when you were making this like Casablanca and Toy Story ripoff? You know, what does that have to do with anything? And that brings me to something else too. Apparently, there are a lot of icons that dropped out of this movie's production, like Little Debbie, for example, and that would have made the most sense for her. But you know what? He's just cat calling or squirrel calling. Is that a thing? Um, from the plane he's flying to this girl who's like I don't know in her 20s. Nothing special about her. She's just in like a blue shirt with cleavage. It looks good, but it's nothing like no branding to it. Like like she's not Little Debbie, for example, or Triskatrina. I don't know. You come up with a good product name that isn't already there. Okay. Um, Nothing really there. And Wayne Brady's character interrupts everything, and he says some of the most stilted dialogue, like when Sunshine, like goodness, goes to look for the plane that crashed. She disappears, and then somehow Wayne Brady's character shows up, but he was the one flying the plane. How he never saw her. Okay, it makes me think that he's behind the whole thing, but he's not. Consistency, what's that, right? Yeah, Wayne Brady's character is insufferable, and so is that weasel, that stinking weasel. He's so weird, and twice he brings out his jacket of stuff. I don't know, kind of like the guys in the trench coats, I guess, from older films that say like they can give you whatever you want, like if you want a good time or something like that. Some of the things in there don't even make sense though. Sometimes they're just like are dead animals or like 2 liters. Hi, why would you carry a 2 liter in your trench coat? And how does your trench coat stay on you when you have that many things? It's like 15 of them. And one time he had like needles, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And I wouldn't mind the adult elements of this movie so much if they were executed properly. If the jokes were actually funny. I think that's the biggest thing that's just a big miss for this movie for me. The great things about Toy Story are lost, and the great things about Casablanca are lost, and the great things about Who Framed Roger Rabbit are all lost. So it's a mixture of the three worst parts of the three movies they're trying to combine here with any other elements. And Lawrence Kasanoff was behind a lot of Mortal Kombat movies too. So even like the camp of that just turns into like a weird sort of camp here. I wouldn't pitch a 10 up in this bitch. I just saying. If you like puns, I like puns. You'll probably like 5 or 10 of them, and that may sound like a lot for a bad movie, but since this movie throws, a couple hundred of puns, 5 or 10 puns to laugh at, isn't a high percentage. It's anywhere from, like 2 to 5%, maybe. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to even talk about. Like I said, the animation's terrible. It looks grainy, and for a movie that was, like 9, 10 years in the making, looks like garbage, to be honest with you. And I'm surprised it's, I didn't pitch it. But to be fair, this was included in my Amazon subscription that I already had. So I just said, okay, I'll turn this on. I was gonna, probably buy it sooner or later anyway. I may as well just like, watch it while it's already on, and I don't have to pay additional for it. Um, yeah, the twists aren't really twists. There's a lot of World War II imagery and fighting. Why would you let your kids see this? Like I said before, I'm not really one that like is too stringent on what your kids should watch or not. But this isn't even like the entertaining kind of adult kind of movie. An adult in terms of like more mature themes. This is just a stupid movie, like for anyone that's watching it. It's even too stupid for kids too. Is what I'm getting at. And if it's too stupid for kids, it's definitely too stupid for adults. It tries to be all adult and edgy, but it just looks really childish and immature. Um, but I like the puns. I like the ideas of what they were going for. Um, but the execution of it was just terrible. So in terms of where this fits into my whole search for the hunt for the right, I'd give it a D, which puts it pretty low on the list in comparison to everything else. Um, but there you go. So I will be talking about the Matrix in the near future. I actually saw Foodfight and the Matrix in the same day because the Matrix was also included on Amazon. Trust me, it was a weird day. But you guys will hear that. You guys will hear about that soon, so it should be good. And I still have the review to film for Annabelle Creation. Um, yeah, and I'm straight out of time on that one, so I'll talk to y'all later. Okay. All right. Bye.